The great hall of the Galactic Council shook as another explosion echoed through space. Commander Vex pressed his 4 hands against the metal table and tried to stay calm. His blue skin had turned pale, and his large eyes showed the fear that filled his heart. Around him, representatives from 12 different alien species argued and shouted in their native languages. The holographic display in the center of the room showed a map of their galaxy. Red dots marked the areas where the enemy had taken control. In just 2 months, the Zephyrian invasion fleet had conquered 3 complete sectors. Their ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen before. They looked like living creatures mixed with machines, and they could heal themselves when damaged. Dr. Kira clicked her sharp mouth parts together. She was from a planet where insect-like beings had learned to think and build great cities. Her 6 arms moved quickly as she worked on her datapad. The numbers she found made her feel sick with worry. "The outer colonies are gone," she said in a voice that buzzed like an angry bee. "The defense grid around the Kepler system fell this morning. We cannot reach any of the settlements there." Commander Vex hit the table with his fist. The sound rang through the quiet hall. "How many ships did we lose at Kepler?" "All of them," Dr. Kira replied. 347 vessels. The enemy did not lose a single ship. The other council members fell silent. These were beings from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They had ruled space for thousands of years. They had stopped wars, cured diseases, and built wonders that stretched across star systems. But now they sat in their great hall like scared children. Ambassador Nix stood up slowly. Her green, scaly skin caught the light from the displays around them. She had lived for over 200 years and had never seen anything like this. "The Zephyrians are not fighting like any enemy we have faced before. Their ships learn from our attacks. Every weapon we use against them becomes useless after the first battle. They adapt too quickly," agreed Captain Ford, who had scales like a fish but walked on 2 legs. "Our plasma cannons worked once. Now their ships just absorb the energy and use it to power their own weapons. Our missiles cannot find their targets because their ships change shape to confuse our guidance systems." Dr. Kira pulled up new data. On the main display, the image showed a Zephyrian ship that looked like a giant sea creature with metal plates covering its body. "They are not just machines, they are alive. Each ship thinks and learns. They share what they learn with all the other ships in their fleet." The youngest member of the council, a being called Zara, who looked like a tall, thin tree with glowing bark, spoke in a voice like wind through leaves. "If they continue at this pace, they will reach the core worlds in 6 days. My home planet will be the first to fall." Counselor Thane had been quiet during the meeting. He was the oldest being in the hall, and his people had ruled the oceans of 12 different worlds. His skin was blue-green like deep water, and he had lived for over 800 years. When he finally spoke, everyone listened. "There is one option we have not talked about," he said slowly. His voice was deep and calm, but there was something frightening in his words. Commander Vex leaned forward. "What option?" "We have tried everything. Our best weapons do nothing. Our fastest ships are too slow. Our smartest scientists cannot understand their technology." Thane looked around the room at each of the other council members, the human protocols. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Several of the aliens stepped back from the table. Ambassador Nix made a sound like a snake hissing. Captain Ford's scales turned from blue to gray, which meant he was very afraid. "You cannot be serious," whispered Dr. Kira. Her voice was so quiet that the translation devices could barely pick up her words. "The humans were banned from Galactic space for good reasons," said Zara. Her glowing bark had turned dark red. "They are dangerous. They destroy everything they touch. Thane nodded slowly. Yes, they are dangerous. That is exactly why we need them. The council chamber had been the site of many important discussions over the centuries, but none like this. The beings in the room represented the most peaceful and advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They believed in solving problems through talking, science, and cooperation. Violence was something they tried to avoid at all costs, but humans were different. Humans were the species that the galaxy had agreed never to contact again. Commander Vex spoke carefully. Counselor Thane, please help us remember why humans were banned. Many of us were not alive during the Terran incident. Thane closed his ancient eyes and spoke as if reading from a history book. 200 years ago, the humans were invited to join the Galactic Council. We thought they would be like us. They seemed to want peace and friendship between worlds. He paused and looked at the display showing the Zephyrian invasion. But humans do not think like us. When pirates attacked trade ships near their space, we suggested negotiations. The humans sent warships. When rebels tried to take over a mining colony, we offered to mediate the dispute. The humans landed soldiers. They solved every problem with violence, added Ambassador Nix. They seemed to enjoy fighting. They created weapons that even we thought were too terrible to use. The final incident happened at Proxima Station, Thane continued. A criminal organization had taken hostages. We were preparing to negotiate for their release. The humans did not wait. They attacked the station. Yes, they saved the hostages, but they destroyed the entire facility and everyone in it who was not innocent. Dr. Kira's arms trembled as she worked. The reports said they used something called nuclear weapons inside the station. They turned the whole place into burning gas. That is when we decided humans were too dangerous for civilized space. Thane sighed. We told them to stay in their own system. We put defense stations around their space to make sure they could not leave. We have not spoken to them since. The room was quiet, except for the sound of the air recycling systems and the distant rumble of explosions as the war continued outside. Captain Ford spoke slowly. But, Counselor, if humans are so violent and dangerous, what makes you think they will help us? What if they decide to take over the galaxy themselves? Thane looked at the red dots on the display that showed how much territory the Zephyrians had already conquered. Because humans have one quality that might save us all. They do not give up. Ever. When faced with impossible odds, they do not surrender. They fight harder. They also do not fight the way we do, he continued. We follow rules. We use proper tactics. We try to minimize damage and protect innocent lives. Humans fight to win, no matter what it costs. Ambassador Nix shook her head. You are asking us to release monsters to fight other monsters. Yes, Thane replied simply. Sometimes that is the only choice we have. The vote was close. 7 species voted to contact the humans. 5 voted against it. Commander Vex cast the deciding vote after looking one more time at the display showing their dying galaxy. Prepare the quantum beacon, he said quietly. Send the signal to Earth. As the council members left the hall to prepare for what might be their final desperate act, none of them knew if they were saving their galaxy or dooming it to an even worse fate. Dr. Yuki stood in front of the ancient communication device that no one had touched for almost 200 years. The machine was huge, filling most of the research station's main lab. It had been built by humans back when the galaxy still talked to Earth. But the alien scientists had kept it working even after the humans were banned. The quantum beacon was beautiful in its own strange way. Cables and wires ran everywhere, connecting crystal displays to metal boxes that hummed with energy. The main control panel had buttons and switches with labels in both human English and several alien languages. Most of the alien writing had faded over the years, but the human words were still clear. Dr. Yuki was nervous as she worked. Her hands shook as she pressed buttons and turned dials. She had studied human technology for her whole career, but she had never actually used any of it before. Humans built things differently than other species in the galaxy. Their machines were louder, more complex, and somehow more alive than alien technology. Captain Ford watched from the doorway. His blue scales had turned pale green, which meant he was worried. "Are you sure you know how to work that thing?" "No," Dr. Yuki said honestly. "Human technology is very different from ours. They build machines that can think and learn, but they do it in ways we do not understand. This beacon is supposed to send messages faster than light across the galaxy, but I'm not sure how it works." She pointed to a large screen that showed numbers and symbols scrolling past very quickly. "According to the old records, this machine can reach Earth in less than 1 minute, but it has been turned off for so long that I do not know if it will still work." Captain Ford walked closer to the machine. The air around it felt different, like the moment before lightning strikes. "The Council gave us 18 hours before the Zephyrians reached this station. If we are going to do this, we need to do it now." Dr. Yuki nodded and continued working. She had spent weeks studying the old instruction manuals that were written in human English. The language was strange to her. Humans used many words that seemed to mean the same thing, and they put their words together in ways that confused alien minds. "The message is ready," she said finally. "It is very simple. Just coordinates showing where we are, and the word help in human language." "That is all?" Captain Ford asked. "Should we not explain what is happening? Tell them about the invasion?" Dr. Yuki shook her head. "The beacon can only send short messages, and according to the old records, humans prefer simple, direct communication. They do not like long explanations when there is danger." She put her hand on the final switch. "Captain, once I send this signal, there is no way to take it back. The humans will know where we are. They will know we need their help. But we do not know if they will come, or what they will do if they do come." Captain Ford thought about this for a long moment. Through the station's windows, they could see distant flashes of light where the Zephyrian ships were destroying the last of the outer defense fleet. Soon those same ships would arrive here. "Send the message," he said quietly. Doctor Yuki flipped the switch. The quantum beacon came alive with a sound like thunder. The lights in the station flickered as the machine drew power from the main reactor. The crystal displays glowed bright white, then changed to deep blue, then to colors that had no names in any alien language. For 30 seconds, the beacon filled the lab with light and sound and energy that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Then everything went quiet. Did it work? Captain Ford asked. Dr. Yuki checked the displays. The numbers and symbols were still scrolling, but they looked different now. "I think so." The message was sent toward the human solar system. "If their receivers are still working, they should have it in a few minutes." Far away, in a solar system at the edge of the galaxy, Admiral Kate Murphy was drinking coffee in her office when the alarms started ringing. She was a tall woman with gray hair and serious eyes who had spent her whole life in the military. She had been born 3 years after the aliens banned humans from space, so she had never seen an alien ship except in old pictures. The communication officer ran into her office without knocking. Lieutenant Sam Clark was young and excited, and he could barely speak. "Admiral, you need to come to the communication center right now. We are receiving a signal on the old alien frequency." Admiral Kate Murphy dropped her coffee cup. "That is impossible. The aliens have not sent us any messages for 200 years. "Yes, ma'am, but the signal is definitely from outside our solar system, and it is using the old quantum beacon protocols." Kate followed Sam to the communication center, where dozens of people were working at computers and looking at displays. The main screen showed a simple message in human English. Help us. Coordinates follow. General Rick Hayes was already there, studying the data. He was Kate's oldest friend and her best tactical advisor. Kate, this signal came from the Altair sector. That is over 300 light years away. Kate stared at the message. Are we sure this is real? Could this be some kind of test or trick? No, ma'am, said Sam. The quantum signature is genuine. This definitely came from one of the old beacon stations. And look at this. He brought up another display that showed energy patterns and wave frequencies. These readings match the records from the old alien communication network. Whoever sent this has access to original alien technology. General Rick Hayes pulled Kate aside. If this is real, then something big is happening out there. The aliens swore they would never contact us again unless the galaxy was ending. Kate nodded slowly. She had read all the old records about humanity's time in galactic space. She knew why the aliens had banned her species. Humans fought differently than other species. They used tactics and weapons that aliens thought were too violent. Sam, can we reply to this signal? Yes, ma'am. The old human beacon in the outer system is still working. We have kept it maintained, just in case. Kate thought for a moment. Send a simple reply. Tell them we received their message and ask for more information. While Sam worked on the reply, Kate and Rick looked at the star charts. The coordinates in the alien message pointed to a region of space that human telescopes had been watching for many years. Rick, have we seen any unusual activity in that area lately? Rick pulled up the latest reports from the deep space monitoring stations. Actually, yes. Our long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving through that region. We thought they might be natural phenomena, but the patterns looked almost like a large fleet of ships. Kate felt a cold feeling in her stomach. How large? Very large. Hundreds, maybe thousands of vessels, all moving in the same direction, toward the core worlds of the old Galactic Council. The reply from Dr. Yuki's station came back within an hour. This time, the message was longer and more detailed. It described the Zephyrian invasion, the fall of the outer colonies, and the complete failure of galactic defenses. The aliens were asking for human military assistance. Kate called an emergency meeting of the Earth Defense Council. The leaders of every nation on Earth gathered by video link to hear the news. For the first time in 2 centuries, aliens were asking for human help. President Lisa Adams spoke for the world government. Admiral Murphy, what is your recommendation? Kate had spent the last hour reviewing every file about the old Galactic Alliance. Madam President, the aliens banned us because they thought we were too violent. Now they are facing an enemy that their peaceful methods cannot stop. They need exactly the kind of help that only humans can provide. But why should we help them? Asked General Tony Martinez from the South American Federation. They threw us out of their galaxy. They treated us like criminals. General Rick Hayes answered, because if this Zephyrian fleet is as powerful as the aliens say, and if they are moving toward the galactic core, they will eventually reach Earth. Better to fight them alongside the aliens than face them alone. Kate looked at the faces on the screens around her. These were the leaders of a world that had been isolated from the galaxy for 200 years. Earth had grown and changed during that time. Human technology had advanced in directions that the aliens had never imagined. There is something else to consider, Kate said. Our ancestors wanted to be part of the galactic community. The aliens rejected us because of who we are. Now they need us because of who we are. This might be our chance to prove that humans deserve a place in the galaxy. The vote was unanimous. Earth would send help. Kate turned to her communication officer. Sam, send a reply to the aliens. Tell them that a human fleet is coming, and contact Captain Jake Morrison. Tell him to prepare the experimental ships for combat operations. As the message raced back across the galaxy toward Dr. Yuki's station, Kate stood looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were fighting for their lives against an enemy they could not defeat. Soon, human ships would join that fight. Kate just hoped that when the shooting stopped there, would still be a galaxy left to save. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UE's Liberty and watched the alien fleet through his viewscreen. The ship around him was unlike anything that had ever been built before. It was sleek and black, with no visible weapons or engines. The hull seemed to bend light around it, making it hard to see even when looking directly at it. Jake was 42, years old, and had spent his entire career preparing for a war that no one thought would ever come. He had short brown hair and calm eyes that missed nothing. His crew trusted him completely because he had never lost a battle in the simulators, and he had never given up on any mission. Lieutenant Commander Amy Price stood next to him at the tactical station. She was younger than Jake, with red hair and quick hands that could work the ship's computers faster than anyone else in the fleet. She had designed many of the systems they were about to use in combat. "Captain, I have the alien." "Fleet positions mapped," Amy said. "There are 312 enemy ships arranged in a standard attack formation. They are moving toward the Galactic Defense Fleet in a straight line." Jake nodded and studied the display. The Zephyrian ships looked like giant sea creatures made of metal and flesh. They moved through space like sharks swimming through water, smooth and deadly. Each ship was at least twice the size of the Liberty. "What about the Galactic Defense Fleet?" Jake asked. Amy brought up another display. 47 ships remaining, scattered across 3 different positions. They are trying to form a defensive line, but the enemy keeps breaking through their formations. Dr. Ben Carter joined them on the bridge. He was the fleet's expert on alien biology and psychology. He had spent years studying every species in the galaxy, learning how they thought and fought. His job was to find weaknesses that human forces could exploit. "Captain, I have been analyzing the enemy communication intercepts," Ben said. He was a thin man with glasses who preferred books to weapons, but his knowledge had won more battles than any gun. "The Zephyrians are a hive mind species. Every ship is connected to every other ship. They think and move as a single organism." "That sounds like it would make them very strong," Jake said. "In some ways, yes," Ben agreed. "They can coordinate perfectly. They share information instantly. They never have confusion or miscommunication. But it also gives them a critical weakness." Amy looked up from her displays. "What kind of weakness?" Ben smiled. "Individual thinking, creativity, the ability to act independently when the situation changes. They have never faced an enemy that fights the way humans fight." Jake walked to the main view screen and looked out at the battle happening in front of them. Alien ships were exploding in bright flashes of light as the Zephyrian fleet moved through them like a knife through paper. The galactic forces were trying to fight in organized formations, using predictable tactics that the enemy had already learned to counter. "Amy, bring up the profiles on our ships," Jake said. The tactical display showed 12 human vessels, each one different from the others. There was the Liberty with its experimental phase shift drive. The Ranger had stealth, systems that could make it completely invisible. The Falcon carried experimental weapons that fired projectiles faster than light. The Ghost could split into smaller ships that could act independently. "The alien fleet has never seen anything like our ships," Jake said. "They have been winning by being bigger and stronger than their enemies. They probably do not know how to fight against enemies who are smaller and faster." Amy pulled up the enemy formation analysis. "Captain, they are arranged in a perfect geometric pattern. Every ship knows exactly where every other ship is supposed to be. If we can disrupt that pattern, they might not be able to adapt quickly enough. Jake opened a communication channel to Commander Vex, who was leading what remained of the galactic fleet. The alien commander appeared on the screen, his blue skin pale with exhaustion and fear. "Captain Morrison, thank you for coming," Vex said. "But I must warn you, these enemies are unlike anything we have ever faced. They adapt to our weapons and tactics within minutes. We have lost 60% of our ships. Commander, that is because you are fighting them the way they expect to be fought," Jake replied. "You are using standard military tactics against an enemy that has already learned to counter standard tactics." "What do you suggest?" Vex asked. Jake smiled. "We are going to show them what human warfare looks like. Amy, initiate Ghost Protocol." Amy's hands moved quickly across her controls. Ghost Protocol activated. All ships are switching to silent running. On Vex's screen, the 12 human ships simply vanished. One moment they were there. The next moment they had disappeared completely. The alien commander's eyes went wide with surprise. "Where did they go?" Vex asked. "We are still here," Jake said. "We are just not visible to their sensors anymore. Amy, deploy the phase shift drives." The Liberty began to move in ways that should have been impossible. It flickered in and out of normal space, appearing and disappearing like a ghost. The other human ships were doing the same thing, using technology that the galaxy had never seen before. Dr. Ben Carter watched the enemy fleet on his biological scanners. "Captain, they are confused. Their hive mind is trying to process what just happened, but they have no reference point for ships that can become invisible." "Good," Jake said. "Amy, target their communication relay ships. Do not go for the big vessels. Hit the small ones that are coordinating their formations." The human ships materialized inside the Zephyrian formation like ghosts appearing in a haunted house. But instead of attacking the largest and most dangerous ships, they targeted small vessels that most military forces would ignore. The Ranger appeared next to a Zephyrian communication ship and fired a single torpedo before disappearing. Again, the enemy vessel exploded, and suddenly 50 other ships in that section of the fleet stopped moving in coordination. The Falcon phase shifted behind a command relay and hit it with experimental plasma cannons. The ship dissolved into glowing particles, and an entire wing of the enemy fleet began receiving contradictory orders. Amy monitored the results from the Liberty's tactical center. "Captain, it is working. We are not destroying many ships, but we are destroying their ability to fight as a coordinated force." The Zephyrian hive mind had never encountered this kind of warfare before. They were used to enemies who attacked their strongest points with overwhelming force. They did not know how to respond to enemies who attacked their weakest points with surgical precision. Jake opened a communication channel to all the human ships. "All vessels, initiate Phase 2. Begin false signal broadcast." Dr. Ben Carter had spent weeks preparing for this moment. He had studied Zephyrian communication protocols and learned how to mimic their language. Now the human ships began broadcasting fake orders using the enemy's own communication systems. "Turn left," the fake signals said to half the fleet. "Turn right," they said to the other half. "Attack the ships in front of you. Retreat to defensive positions. Advance at maximum speed." The Zephyrian fleet began to tear itself apart. Ships collided as they followed conflicting orders. Some vessels fired on their own allies because the false signals identified them as enemies. The perfect formation dissolved into chaos. Commander Vex watched from his command ship in amazement. "Captain Morrison, how are you doing this? We have never seen tactics like these." "Commander, that is the difference between human warfare and galactic warfare," Jake explained. "You fight to destroy the enemy. We fight to make the enemy destroy itself." Amy brought up new tactical data. "Captain, Their hive mind is fragmenting. Individual ships are starting to act independently because they cannot receive clear orders from the collective consciousness. Perfect, Jake said. Now they are fighting the way we fight. Individual ships making their own decisions. But they have never had to think for themselves before. The battle continued for another hour, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. The Zephyrian ships, cut off from their hive mind and unable to coordinate their actions, became easy targets for the combined human and alien fleet. Dr. Ben Carter monitored the enemy psychology readings. Captain, their morale is collapsing. They do not understand what is happening to them. They have gone from being an unstoppable force to being scattered and confused. Jake watched as the last of the enemy ships retreated into hyperspace. The Galactic fleet had lost many vessels, but they had won their first major victory against the Zephyrian invasion force. Commander, Vex appeared on the communication screen again. Captain Morrison, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you. You have shown us a completely new way of thinking about warfare. Commander, this was just the beginning, Jake replied. This was not their main fleet. This was a scouting force. The real Zephyrian Empire is much larger, and now they know that someone can defeat them. The weight of that statement settled over both the human and alien crews. They had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. Jake looked around the bridge at his crew. Amy was already analyzing the battle data, looking for ways to improve their tactics. Ben was studying the captured Zephyrian communications, learning more about their enemy. All around him, humans were doing what they did best, adapting, learning, and preparing for the next fight. Amy, send a message to Earth, Jake said. Tell them we need more ships. Tell them the galaxy. The main Zephyrian battle fleet arrived 3 days later, and it was like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. Where the scouting force had been 300 ships, the main fleet was over 5,000 vessels. Each ship was larger than a city, biomechanical creatures that swam through space like living mountains. Hive Leader Prime felt the collective consciousness of its species flowing through its mind. Every Zephyrian ship was connected to every other ship, sharing thoughts and plans instantly across vast distances. They had conquered 47 different star systems using this perfect coordination, and they had never lost a single major battle, but something was wrong. The scouting fleet that had gone ahead to prepare for the main invasion had been destroyed. Worse, they had been destroyed by tactics that the hive mind could not understand. The enemy had used deception, misdirection, and chaos, concepts that were alien to the Zephyrian way of thinking. Analyze the battle records from the scouting fleet. Hive Leader Prime commanded through the collective consciousness. Thousands of Zephyrian minds worked together to study the data. They saw how the unknown enemy ships had appeared and disappeared. At will, they saw how false communications had been used to turn their own coordination against them. They saw tactics that made no logical sense from a military perspective. The enemy used inefficient methods, reported Sub-Leader 7, speaking for a group of tactical specialists. They targeted minor vessels instead of command ships. They wasted time and resources on deception instead of direct assault. Their methods should not have been effective. Yet they were effective, Hive Leader Prime replied. Prepare for battle with maximum caution. Deploy scouts to identify these new enemies before the main engagement. The Galactic Defense Fleet waited in the shadow of a large asteroid field. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the sensors as the Zephyrian fleet approached. Beside him, Captain Jake Morrison studied the enemy formation through the human tactical displays. They are being more careful this time, Jake observed. Look at how they are spread out. They are not using the tight formations that we exploited before. Amy Price worked at her station, analyzing the enemy movements. Captain, They are sending scout ships ahead of the main fleet. They are trying to detect our stealth systems before they commit to battle. Jake nodded. The Zephyrians were learning, which made them more dangerous. But he had expected this. Humans had been preparing for this moment for 3 days, and they had not been sitting still. Ben, what is your assessment of their psychology? Jake asked. Dr. Ben Carter looked up from his analysis screens. They are nervous, Captain. The destruction of their scouting fleet has shaken their confidence. They do not understand how they lost, which means they do not know how to prevent it from happening again. That gives us an advantage, Jake said. Fear of the unknown is something that hive minds handle very poorly. They are used to perfect information sharing. When they do not understand something, it spreads confusion through their entire collective consciousness. Commander Vex listened to the human discussion with interest. In the 3 days since the first battle, he had been learning about human military thinking. It was completely different from anything he had studied before. Captain Morrison, your people seem to enjoy the fact that the enemy is afraid, Vex said. Galactic military doctrine teaches us to be honorable toward defeated enemies. Jake smiled. Commander, with respect, galactic military doctrine has not been working very well against these particular enemies. Sometimes fear is a weapon that can save lives on both sides. The human fleet had grown since the first battle. Admiral Kate Murphy had sent 20 more ships from Earth, including some vessels that carried experimental technology that had never been tested in real combat. The humans now had 32 ships against the Zephyrian fleet of 5,000. Amy, initiate deep stealth protocol, Jake ordered. All human ships phase to secondary dimensional space. The human fleet disappeared. Completely. Not just from normal sensors, but from reality itself. The ships moved into a parallel dimension where they could observe the enemy, but could not be detected by any known technology. Lieutenant, Commander Amy Price monitored the phase shift systems from her tactical station. All ships have successfully transitioned to secondary space. We are invisible to both conventional and quantum sensors. From their hidden position, the human fleet watched as the Zephyrian scouts swept through the area where the Galactic Defense Fleet was waiting. The alien ships found the galactic vessels easily, but they could not detect any sign of the human fleet. They know we are here somewhere, Jake said, but they cannot find us. That is going to make them even more nervous. Dr. Ben Carter studied the bioreadings from the Zephyrian ships. Captain, their stress levels are increasing. The unknown factor is causing anxiety throughout their hive mind. They are starting to make small mistakes in their coordination. Jake opened a communication channel to all the human ships. All vessels, prepare for Operation Chaos Theory. We are going to show them what happens when order meets disorder. The plan that the humans had developed was unlike anything that had ever been tried in galactic warfare. Instead of trying to defeat the enemy fleet through superior firepower or better tactics, they were going to attack the enemy's ability to think. Phase 1, begin, Jake commanded. The UES Phantom materialized in the middle of the Zephyrian formation and immediately fired a spread of special torpedoes. But these were not normal weapons. They were information warfare devices that broadcast powerful electromagnetic signals designed to disrupt biomechanical systems. The torpedoes did not explode. Instead, they latched onto Zephyrian ships and began flooding their communication. Networks with random data, math equations, human music, poetry, and the complete works of Shakespeare were pumped directly into the hive mind at a rate of millions of gigabytes per second. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Zephyrian collective consciousness, which was used to processing clear, logical information, suddenly found itself trying to understand human cultural data that made no sense to alien minds. What is a sonnet? Asked Subleader 12. It's mind overwhelmed by human poetry. Why do humans make sounds for pleasure? Wondered Sub-Leader 3, trying to process a symphony orchestra. The square root of -1 cannot exist, complained Sub-Leader 5, struggling with human mathematics that used imaginary numbers. Hive Leader Prime felt the confusion spreading through the collective consciousness like a virus. Stop processing the data streams. Focus only on tactical information. But it was too late. The human information had already infected the hive mind. Thousands of Zephyrian minds were now trying to understand concepts like love, humor, art, and hope. These ideas were so foreign to their collective consciousness that they could not simply be ignored. Phase 2 begin, Jake ordered. The human ships materialized throughout the enemy formation, but instead of attacking, they began broadcasting human entertainment. Comedy shows, action movies, soap operas, and reality television flooded Zephyrian communication networks, the alien hive mind, which had evolved to process military and scientific data, suddenly found itself trying to understand why humans thought certain situations were funny, why they cried at movies, and why they got emotionally involved with fictional characters. Sub-Leader 9 found itself wondering why the characters in a human romantic comedy did not simply exchange genetic material and be done with it. Sub-Leader 2 could not understand why humans cheered for sports teams that had no impact on their survival. Sub-Leader 15 was completely baffled by a cooking show that treated food preparation as an art form rather than simple nutrition. Zephyrian fleet began to slow down as more and more of their collective consciousness became occupied with trying to understand human culture. Ships started to drift out of formation as their pilots became distracted by human television shows. Phase 3 begin, Jake commanded. Now the human ships began the real attack. While the enemy hive mind was busy trying to process human entertainment, human weapons struck at critical systems throughout the Zephyrian fleet. But even the attacks were designed to confuse rather than simply destroy. The used trickster fired special missiles that created holographic copies of themselves. Each missile became 50 missiles, then each of those became 50 more. Soon the space around the Zephyrian fleet was filled with thousands of fake missiles mixed with real ones. The enemy point defense systems tried to shoot down all the missiles, but they could not tell which ones were real. They wasted enormous amounts of energy destroying holograms, while the real missiles slipped through their defenses. Amy Price coordinated the assault from the Liberty's Tactical Center. Captain, their response time is down by 60%. They are spending too much processing power on the cultural data to respond effectively to our attacks. The U.E.'s mirror began broadcasting false sensor readings throughout the enemy fleet. Suddenly, every Zephyrian ship thought it was surrounded by enemies that did not exist. They began firing at empty space, at their own ships, and at asteroids that their confused sensors identified as hostile vessels. Dr. Ben Carter monitored the psychological impact of the attack. Captain, their hive mind is fragmenting. Individual ships are star. 6 months after the Great Battle, the Galactic Council met in emergency session on the neutral world of Harmony Station. The massive space station floated in the void between star systems, its crystal towers gleaming in the light of distant suns. For the first time in 200 years, humans were invited to attend as full members rather than as outsiders. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the corridors of Harmony Station wearing a new uniform. He was no longer just a ship captain. The human government had promoted him to admiral and made him their representative to the galactic community. Behind him walked a small group of human advisors, including Amy Price and Ben Carter, the aliens. They passed in the hallways, stared at them with mixtures of curiosity, respect, and fear. Some had never seen humans before. Others remembered the old stories about human violence and unpredictability. All of them had heard about the battle where humans had defeated the Zephyrian fleet using music and television shows. Admiral Morrison. "Welcome to Harmony Station," said Ambassador Nix as they approached the council chambers. Her green, scaly skin was bright with nervous energy. "The council is very eager to hear your report about the remaining Zephyrian forces." Jake nodded politely. "Thank you, Ambassador. I think the council will find our discoveries very interesting." The main council chamber was even larger than Jake had imagined. Representatives from over 50 different species sat in a great circle. There are various forms of alien life, creating a rainbow of colors and shapes. At the center of the room was a holographic display that could show star maps, tactical data, and communication feeds. Counselor Thane, the ancient aquatic being who had first suggested contacting humans, gestured for Jake to approach the center of the chamber. "Admiral Morrison, please share with the council what your fleet has learned about the Zephyrian Empire." Jake activated his datapad, and the central display filled with a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red areas showed Zephyrian-controlled territory, while blue areas showed the space controlled by the Galactic Council. There was much more red than blue. "Honored counselors," Jake began, "over the past 6 months, human reconnaissance ships have penetrated deep into Zephyrian space. What we have found changes everything we thought we knew about this enemy." He highlighted a region of space near the galactic core. "The Zephyrians are not conquerors in the way we understand the term. They are refugees." A murmur of surprise ran through the chamber. Commander Vex leaned forward in his seat. "Refugees? But they have been destroying entire civilizations." "Yes, they have," Jake agreed. "But not because they want to rule the galaxy. Because they are running from something that destroyed their original home." Amy Price stepped forward and added new data to the display. "Our ships found the remains of the original Zephyrian homeworld in a distant galaxy. The planet was completely destroyed by an enemy that the Zephyrians call the Devourers." The display showed images that made several council members gasp in shock. A dead world, its surface cracked and burning, surrounded by the wreckage of billions of Zephyrian ships. Whatever had attacked that world had been thorough and merciless. Dr. Ben Carter provided the psychological analysis. The Zephyrians developed their hive mind as a response to trauma. When their world was destroyed, the survivors linked their minds together to share the burden of grief and fear. Their aggression toward other species is actually a form of desperate self-defense. Counselor Thane studied the data carefully. "You are saying that the Zephyrians attack us because they are afraid?" "More than afraid," Jake said. "They are terrified. Their hive mind has convinced them that every other species in the galaxy is potentially as dangerous as the Devourers who destroyed their home. They conquer worlds not for resources or territory, but to eliminate perceived threats before those threats can attack them." Ambassador Nix stood up from her seat. "This is very interesting, Admiral, but it does not change the fact that they have killed billions of innocent beings. How does understanding their motivation help us?" Jake smiled. "Because understanding your enemy is the first step toward defeating them. Or in this case, toward helping them." The chamber fell silent. The idea of helping the Zephyrians after all the destruction they had caused was difficult for many council members to accept. "Admiral Morrison," said Captain Ford, "are you suggesting that we negotiate with them?" "They have shown no interest in peaceful contact." "That is because they have never been offered what they actually need," Jake replied. He highlighted another section of the galactic map. "Human exploration ships have found several uninhabited star systems that would be perfect for Zephyrian colonization. Worlds with the right climate, the right resources, and most importantly, the right location." Amy brought up tactical charts showing defensive positions. "If we offer the Zephyrians these systems and help them build defenses against the Devourers, they would have no reason to continue their war against the galaxy." Dr. Ben Carter added the final piece of the puzzle. Our analysis shows that the Zephyrian hive mind is fracturing under the stress of constant warfare. Individual Zephyrians are starting to think independently for the first time in centuries. Some of them want peace, but they are afraid to speak against the collective consciousness. Jake looked around the chamber at the faces of the alien representatives. Humans are offering to serve as mediators in peace negotiations with the Zephyrians. We can offer them something that no other species in the galaxy can offer: understanding. Commander. Vex was confused. What do you mean by understanding, Admiral? Humans know what it is like to be considered dangerous by the rest of the galaxy, Jake explained. We know what it is like to be feared and isolated. We know what it is like to fight alone against impossible odds. The Zephyrians and humans have more in common than either species has with anyone else in this chamber. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some council members wanted to continue the war until the Zephyrians were completely destroyed. Others wanted to try negotiations, but did not trust humans to represent galactic interests. A few suggested that the Zephyrian threat was too dangerous to risk any form of diplomacy. Finally, Councillor Thane called for order. Admiral Morrison, if the Council agrees to these peace negotiations, what guarantee do we have that the Zephyrians will honor any agreement? Jake had been waiting for this question. Councillor, humans will provide that guarantee. If the Zephyrians break a peace treaty, human forces will help the galaxy fight them. But if the galaxy breaks the treaty, human forces will help the Zephyrians defend themselves. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Several representatives began shouting at once. The idea that humans would fight against the galaxy to protect former enemies was beyond anything they had imagined. You are proposing to hold the entire galaxy hostage to ensure peace, accused Ambassador Nix. No, Jake replied calmly. We are proposing to hold everyone accountable for keeping the peace. Humans learned long ago that the only way to guarantee a fair agreement is to make sure that breaking it costs everyone equally. The vote was closer than anyone had expected. 26 species voted in favor of human-mediated peace negotiations. 24 voted against. The motion passed by the smallest possible margin. 3 weeks later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty as it approached the first Zephyrian diplomatic ship in galactic history. The alien vessel was smaller than their warships, but still impressive, looking like a living creature made of silver and gold. Admiral, we are receiving a communication from the Zephyrian ship, reported Amy Price from her tactical station. Put them through. The main screen flickered, and the image of a Zephyrian appeared. It looked similar to the warriors they had fought, but its biomechanical features were softer, more organic. When it spoke, its voice was hesitant and uncertain. I am individual who speaks for many, formerly Sub-Leader 47 of the Conquest Fleet. I have been chosen to represent those among my people who wish to explore the possibility of peace. Jake stepped forward. I am Admiral Jake Morrison of the Human Star Fleet. On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome you to these negotiations. The Zephyrian's eyes showed surprise. You are the beings who attacked our fleet with sounds and images. You confused our hive mind with concepts we could not understand. Yes, Jake admitted. We did what we had to do to stop the invasion. But we are here now to find a better way forward. Individual who speaks for many was quiet for a moment. Our collective consciousness has been damaged by exposure to your cultural transmissions. Many of us now think as individuals rather than as part of the hive. Some say this is a disease. Others say it is a gift. What do you say? Jake asked. The Zephyrian looked directly at him, and for the first time, Jake saw an alien mind that was truly thinking for itself. I say that for the first time in 300 years, I can imagine a future that does not involve constant fear and warfare. The negotiations took 6 months, but they were successful. The Zephyrians were given 4 star systems at the edge of the galaxy, far from both the galactic core and the direction from which the Devourers might come. Human engineers helped them build defensive stations they could protect against their ancient enemy. Galactic scientists shared technology that could help rebuild their civilization. In return,